Zero Mark here with my event preview of the upcoming Crusade event. The Doomed Mine of the Wendigo. This past week was a nice change of pace. The Slayer event went off pretty well, despite the haunted bosses not quite working as expected. But I think a lot of the good feelings about the last Slayer event were not that it was better than any other time, but just in contrast to the arena, and that it was back to a normal event that people like, and things went off pretty well. Again, except for the haunted bosses not working out well. And I think the most frustrating thing about that was the fact that all of the communication coming from Network kind of said that things were kind of working as intended, but not quite, instead of there's something broken and wrong and needs to be fixed. So I hope that they can figure that out, because the concept of having something to do other than just the Slayer was kind of fun, the collecting candy. They did it once a while back with the eggs in the Easter event, and that was kind of an interesting thing to do, something to do in addition to, above and beyond just the normal Slayer stuff. So maybe they can bring it back, but not until it actually works, because it was kind of just frustrating to sit there and see a boss that has 250 slots and only has 5 people on it. So that's kind of ridiculous, and that was constant throughout the entire event. So hopefully they get that fixed. But anyway, back to a normal Commander event. They say upcoming Crusade improvements. Let's see what the upcoming Crusade improvements are. So the event collection has been improved with the goal of providing better rewards. Well, the collections in this game have never really been that great. The event stores don't really have that much great stuff in them beyond the Wisp core shards and the Wisp, and then the event catalyst. All the rest of the stuff is basically junk. The rewards in the collection, a lot of them basically junk. So it wouldn't take much to get better rewards, but I'm not hopeful that things will be actually of that much value, because they've never been known to give out things that actually have value as rewards for anything. The only place you can really get rewards that are decent are in the Legend Trials. They removed the hard bosses, and regular bosses and legend bosses are the only ones that are there. So this is going back to the way it was before the last Crusade event, which is kind of normal. Overkill achievements have now been retuned to apply to bosses up to level 500. Well, that's going to be irrelevant for most players. Super Mega Whales will be able to get a lot more points this way, but normal people it won't really affect things that much. So the way the Crusade event has kind of evolved, initially the map, you had to fight through each map on the way to the next. So you had to start with the easy map, and until you'd beat every level on the easy map, you couldn't get to the medium map, and then you couldn't get to the hard map. And so keys were hugely scarce on the first day of a Crusade event. So you had to be very careful about key management in the first couple of days. You were trying to one-key bosses as far as you possibly could, because you didn't know if you'd have enough keys, and you'd run out of keys. And then by the weekend, you'd finally get to the hard map, and then you could have plenty of keys to do everything. Well, they changed that, and I think that improvement was actually nice, to let you choose which map that you want to start on. And that provided people with a lot more keys. But then then they added the overkill, so that you could jump up more bosses. And prior to overkill, and prior to the Head Start store, and prior to them allowing you to jump straight to the hard map, you had to start on a level 1 boss and use 1 key per boss all the way up. And so the first day you were fighting minuscule bosses that had no health, and it was a true just epic grind of just annoying. So adding the Head Start store, letting people jump straight to level 50 bosses, which you might not want to do. If you're a lower level player, jumping to 50 isn't necessarily the right answer. Fighting those bosses along the way could be more valuable. But adding the Head Start store so you can jump to 50, adding the overkill bonuses so you can jump 4 bosses at a time instead of 1 if you're massively crushing things, to try and get you to a appropriate boss level more quickly, is a good change. And giving you access to a lot more keys earlier, I think was a good change. That then put them in the conundrum of people were getting to the level 300 boss really quickly, and spending all of this time just bashing away at the level 300 boss, and people thought it was getting tedious, and so they changed the boss level cap to 500. So now you can be grinding all weekend to get up to the crazy high bosses at level 500. I don't know that I'm a huge fan of that, but there it is. So Crusade has had some improvements. I definitely think it's a better event than it was 6 months ago. So there's maybe still some tweaks to be made, but I think it's an event that's definitely kind of matured and is in a fairly decent state at the moment. So the Crusade event has become all about this overkill damage, because you can get tons more points by killing one boss with a lot of overkill. You get 4 times the points from each kill. So that allows you to rack up a lot of points a lot more quickly. So let's take a look at this deck and see how they've made this into an overkill specific deck. So this is the event hero, Iron Spine Night Horse. So battle skill is to increase attack by 35% plus an additional 10%, okay, up to a max of 400 for 1 turn. So 400 attack increase for all of your fighters is a pretty good attack. But then here's the juice in this. If you have 8 water power gem 1s or higher on the board, this is increased by 10 times. So that's a 4,000% attack increase. Notice that the cooldown is 6 turns, so you can only use this once every 6 turns. That means that you're getting a 4,000% attack boost, so a massive attack boost, but once every 6 turns. So that's setting it up for a one-time attack that's going to give you your massive overkill damage. Also notice the passive. Every 3 turns creates 4 water power gem 1s. And if you're resilient, it's increased to power gem 2s. And resilience is going to be a condition that comes from the ultra rare card of this deck. But if you have 8 power gem 1s on the board from the battle skill, well, the passive creates 4 water power gem 1s every 3 turns. So if you have 2 of these guys in your deck, every 3 turns you're going to be creating 8 power gems, so you're automatically going to trigger that extra 10 times increase in attack. So every 3 turns, so the second time of that 3 turns would be the time that your 6-turn cooldown is setting up. So you can get a board full of power gems and get a 4,000% attack increase if you have enough intensity, and do some serious damage on that 1 turn. So it's set up to have massive damage on one particular turn, but not so much attack boosts on the other turns. So it's normal attack the other turns, and then you get this massive attack boost every 6th turn. So if we look at the X13 card, we see that it's just the upgraded version of that one. So instead of going up to a max of 400% attack, this one go to a max of 500, and then when you get the 10 times multiplier on that, that's doing 5,000% increase in attack. And notice down in the passive, now every 3 turns it's creating 6 water power gem 1s, or power gem 2s if you're resilient. So 6 every turn. So if you can put this guy in, so if you have an X13 and a main event card, you're generating 10 power gem 1s every 3 turns. So that's pretty good because it triggers that huge high attack boost. And if you can set it up that you get a couple of these where you're not attacking in the middle, so that you can build up a couple of layers of these, you could potentially put a lot of power gems on the board. Give yourself a massive attack boost, because this guy's giving you 5,000, the other one's giving you 4,000. Now you're getting a 9,000% attack boost with a board full of power gems. So it's set up to be this massive overkill deck of these one giant hits. The support card, and so this deck isn't like the last event deck, the Slayer event deck. It's really a 2-card deck. And so there's 2 base cards, and then there's 2 buffed versions of the base cards. So like the main event hero is the base version, and then the X13 is the buffed version. The support card is a base version, and then the ultra rare is just a buffed version of the support card. So this is the change that they've made when people were complaining that they didn't want decks that depended on the ultra rare. What they did is, instead of creating interesting 3-card decks where the ultra rare boosted but wasn't kind of integral to the making the deck work, they just made it 2-card decks. And so now you don't need the ultra rare for this deck to work, because the support card does basically the same thing. But this one, the ultra rare does add a boost. So the battle skill for the support card is to become immune to damage for 1 turn, and if you're hit by an enemy while immune, you heal by 5% recovery per 5 human intensity. So if you get your human intensity high enough, this is going to be a pretty big heal because it scales based on intensity. So if you use that at the right time so that you get attacked the next turn, you get a big heal. 5-turn cooldown. So if you have 2 of these in your deck and you stagger when you use that skill, you can be immune and get healing from a lot of the boss's hits. So this should allow you to last pretty much indefinitely if you get the timing right of these, of using these skills when they're attack. The support hero also has a passive that each time the hero attack, it creates 5 water gems plus 1 additional water gem if Resilient is active. So you're getting 5 water gems every time they attack. This is an interesting card to me that could be kind of kept around and used in future water decks because it's generating on attack passively 5 water gems. There's no intensity requirement for that. There's no type requirement for that. So in any deck that you need water gems generated, if you have one of these in there, you're going to be getting 5 of them every turn that you attack. So it's potentially useful to piece together other decks if you need water gem generation. So if you have a couple of these in your deck, every time you attack, you're getting a bunch of water gems. So that's going to keep you moving there, and then you can get the immunity every 5th turn. So an interesting card for me in terms of being able to hold on to and potentially use later in addition to using in this deck. So I said the ultra rare is just an upgraded version of the support card, and you see that it has the same becoming immune to damage for 1 turn. It heals by 5% recovery per 3 human intensity versus per 5, and if attacked while immune, you become resilient, gaining damage reduction for 3 turns. But the real benefit of resilient is that it affects the main event and the X13 card. Instead of their passives generating Power Gem 1s, it upgrades them to Power Gem 2s. So being resilient makes those other cards better. Also, it's passive. Each time this hero attacks, it creates 3 water gems and 2 Power Gem 3s. So that's the same 5 water Power Gems as the support card, except for the ultra rare, 2 of them are Power Gem 3s. And then if you're resilient, you get an additional Power Gem 3. So you get 3 water gems and 3 Power Gem 3s every time you attack when you're resilient. And again, it can only use its battle skill every 5 turns, but that gives that immunity and that heal if you'd use it in the right place. So for this deck, I think I'd be looking at if I could get them, maybe even up to 3 ultra rares and 2 X13s. If I only could get a hold of support cards, probably 2 support cards and 3 main event or X13 cards, so that you can be getting some water gems, and then when you get that 1 turn, you can load up all of those attack boosts and all the power gems that are generated and just annihilate things. So kind of 3 main event / X13 cards and 2 support / ultra rare cards would be how I would set this deck up. It looks to me like an interesting deck, but not necessarily one that I think would have much use outside of a commander event, but looks pretty good for inside of a commander event because it looks like you're going to be able to get those 1-turn massive attacks, which would allow you to get the overkill. So for a commander event, that's important. One-time huge big booms can also be useful in a Slayer event, because Slayer event you have to kill things quickly, so doing a lot of damage on one particular turn is great. The downfall to this deck is that if you don't make it on that 1 attack in a Slayer event, you've got to wait 5 turns for the attack boost to regenerate before you can get that second really good attack in. But overall, interesting deck. I think it'll be good for this event. I don't foresee it being one that people keep kind of coming back to. Don't think it'll be good for like PvP or for guild versus guild attack decks, but I think for a commander deck it'll be great, and if you get enough of these X13s, you'll be doing some massive overkill damage along the way. So I hope you enjoy playing the Doomed Mine of the Wendigo this weekend. All right, until next time.